What's up, everybody? You are watching the Barbites podcast, the podcast for law students looking to life hack their legal careers and find out from the best and brightest in the field to get to where they are today. I'm your host, Michael Goldfadden, founder of the plaintiff's personal injury firm, Goldfadden Law, located here in San Diego, California. And we've got a very special show for you today. We actually have two guests on the podcast today, Jeremiah Lowe and Victoria Lazar, who have recently left the behemoth firm Gomez Trial Attorneys here in San Diego, California. They've gone out on their own and started their own firm, Lowe and Lazar Law. And we're going to ask them a little bit about that today. What went into their decision to go out on their own, to start this firm, and where they see this firm going in the future. So without further ado, I'd like to give a warm Barbites welcome to Jeremiah and Victoria. Thanks so much for being here today, guys.
Well, thank you for having us on.
Thank you.
It's truly my pleasure. And honestly, I know that we talked, Jeremiah wrote to me this morning and said, would it be cool if Victoria came on as well? And I was like, that would be cool. I think that would be great. So I'm happy that you suggested it, and I'm happy that you both are taking the time to be here today. So thank you for that. Before we get going, I do like to just let you guys know a little bit about the podcast and the purpose around it. I know we were just talking about this in the hallway, but the Barbites podcast is exactly what it sounds like. Well, it sort of sounds like little miniature foods that you might order at a bar. But my intended purpose of calling it that was to give law students little bites of information about what it takes to pass the California bar and to be a part of this bar that we all hold dear to our hearts. You both have had a unique past and upbringing in order to get you to where you are today. And that's what we're hoping to talk to you a little bit about. So Jeremiah, you were first invited onto the podcast by me. I know that you have won the Trial Lawyer of the Year award offered by CASD, which is a very, very high honor. And you're already a legend in the field. People want to hear about what it takes to achieve the success that you've achieved. Victoria, I know a lot of our guests, a majority of our guests are female, and they want to hear from inspiring female trial attorneys. You are now a founder and co-business owner of this law firm. I'm sure that you are very proud of doing so, and so I'm hoping that you can help some of our students in choosing their career paths and then what it took to get there. So let's start with you, okay? Victoria, what is your why? What is your reason that you got into this crazy field of personal injury law to begin with?
Well, it took some time to figure out what I wanted to do. I wasn't one of those people that grew up knowing I wanted to be a lawyer. I didn't have any lawyers in my family. And so it was something that I kind of had to come to through experience and trial and error. And once I decided that I wanted to be a lawyer, it was testing out the waters in the different area of the law. And once I got a taste of personal injury, I knew that was for me. It was the perfect balance of working with human beings that have been through something difficult and the opportunity to help them, but also to get that civil litigation experience to get up on my feet and be a trial lawyer.
Did you always know that you wanted to be a trial attorney when you were in law school? Because a lot of people think they know what they want when they go into law school, and then you get there and you're like, I don't know, man, this just seems a little bit different than what I thought. So what was your experience with that?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird area of the law to go into if you have some nervousness around public speaking, which I did, and I took some classes in college. And once I got to law school, I just said, I'm all in. I'm doing trial team. I'm going to try for the appellate competitions, which didn't go well, but trial team did. And I figured, okay, I can do this. And I love this area of the law enough. And so I'm going to go for the whole thing. And to me, that's being a trial lawyer.
And was it the same for you, Jeremiah? I mean, were you always in the bottom of your heart, did you know that you wanted to be in trial, practicing those skills and just being on your feet in front of a judge and a jury?
No, I mean, definitely not growing up. But my dad was a trial lawyer, and so I always was really intrigued by what he did, and I saw some of the things that he was doing, how passionate he was about the people he was helping. So I knew I wanted to help people in some way, but I never really saw myself as being a trial lawyer. I got out of college and still didn't really know what I was doing. Did sales for a little bit and then really felt not fulfilled. And then I was like, I just don't know what I want to do. So I felt like, a law school degree will help me because I don't know what I want to do now. At least give me more options, more doors will open, hopefully. And so that's kind of how I got into it, not really knowing. And certainly was not even during law school where I was like, I'm going to be a trial lawyer and go into, talk to juries all the time. I don't think I never clicked to me that way until I was actually in a firm that was very focused on trial work and getting to be in the courtroom in cases where I was like, whoa, I am really in love with this, being in the courtroom, helping the clients and the people that we were helping who were catastrophically injured, and just thinking, this is where I'm meant to be.
You bring up a couple interesting points there. I mean, you both worked at Gomez Trial Attorneys, and I know that Gomez is this behemoth in San Diego, right? They have produced some of the best trial attorneys that we have here in San Diego. On our podcast, we've had a number of guests who have come out of this practice. B.B. Fell, Ben Coughlin was a guest recently on the show. You've obviously, Jeremiah, been able to distinguish yourself amongst these titans that were at that firm. I mean, winning the Trial Lawyer of the Year award for CASD is no small feat. So how did you do that, and how were you not intimidated by all of these amazing people around you, yet able to distinguish yourself in a way that allows you to accept some of these awards?
That's interesting because, I've always, all of them are close friends. Like Dave Fox has been on your show too. All of them, like, just really good human beings, good people. And so I've always looked at it like we all collaborate. It was very much a team atmosphere there, and we would share ideas, and we would, really just revel in the other's success. And when somebody, fell down and had failures, everyone else would be there to pull us up. And so that type of an environment where everybody's rooting for each other, and you really learn a lot from each other. And so I agree. The people that have come through that office, and I would date myself. When I started, there was 5 lawyers. There was 5 of us. It was Robert Hamparian, Jim Yagman, Teresa Bowen, myself, and Jessica Sizemore was a law clerk, and John. And, good people, all really good people, like Jim Yagman. He is a stalwart in the community. Robert Hamparian, one of the greatest trial lawyers in the community.
Robert, we had on recently as a guest too. Just such a genuine guy. When you meet someone sometimes and you're just like, this is such a good person. That was the vibe I got from him. But yeah, that's certainly a class to come up with.
Could not agree more. And that's the thing, like having those people like as mentors and helping you through the process of learning makes all the difference in the world. It really does. And so I don't think my success, I would certainly not have had the success I've had if it hadn't been the fact that I surrounded myself with really talented, good people.
Well, you were obviously surrounded by a lot of talent and good people at the firm itself, because the two of you work together and were in the same pod. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? I mean, I use the term pod, and yet I'm not super familiar with it. We've had some guests talk about it a little bit, but what is the structure? What is this pod structure that exists at Gomez? And Victoria, maybe you can talk to us a little bit about it. What is it comprised of, and what is the thinking behind working as a small unit within this larger unit?
Yeah, so I would refer to it, or at least I think how we did, was it's your trial teams.
Okay,
and
maybe I just created pod.
Well, and it is a pod. It's a team, and you really do. Within your team, you have your cases that you handle as a team, and it really is up to you how you're pushing those cases forward, how you're litigating them. And each team has their own freedom to do that. And so for us as a team, we really had the opportunity to build our style as a team, to work up cases, to figure out how we wanted to do that together, to get to try cases together. And so it's a really good opportunity to see how the other works and then to absolutely succeed. And I think that's why they do as well as they do, because each team has their cohesive structure and their processes. And then again, as Jeremiah was saying, everyone collaborates. And so there's always, the resources and the guidance and wisdom available. So that's kind of my opinion of that.
Who are the players in the team? You have 2 attorneys, or you have a senior attorney and a trial attorney and a paralegal. Is that how it works?
Mm-hmm.
And what is the thinking behind it, or what do you think works about that and what doesn't work about that?
Well, what I liked about it, and I was able to help choose the team that I had went out and I really wanted Victoria to join my team because I wanted somebody that I could trust, who I thought had really high standards, high morals, high ethics, and somebody who I thought would be really well balanced for a trial partner in trial in the courtroom. I also thought it was important to have a female as part of my team because I think you get very different, unique perspectives. And so for that, I thought it was good to have a sort of a healthy balance. But as part of what we're talking about, the whole purpose is to have clients who know who their lawyers are. They don't get passed around. They don't say, okay, now it's time to go to trial. Now you go to a different lawyer. You start with the same people you end with, right? Mm. And you go through the whole process together. So you get to spend a lot of time getting to know your clients. We always had manageable caseloads, and that was something that was really important to me when we started our own practice, to say, I don't want to be a high volume firm. We want to be very, very narrow focused in the cases that we're taking, being very selective and only helping the clients that we really truly are passionate about helping. And that way you get to spend that much more time getting to know them, getting to know their story. And that was the purpose of the trial team, is to not have, 100 cases where you're working on, you don't really know them. You break it out, and so everybody's got their groupings of cases.
Yeah, you mentioned something that I think is important. A lot of our law students are not familiar with the structures of law firms, right? But you do have certain law firms that divide their departments into sort of a pre-litigation department and a litigation department. And so you might get a different lawyer when you first walk in the door as a client than the person who's going to go to trial with you and see a case through with you until the end. Have you guys tried to take any of those ideas of your trial team and instill them into your own firm now? Like, is that part of your foundation, or do you do what I would assume you do with parenting? You kind of take the good and leave the rest. So what have you guys taken with you in the new firm, and what are you planning on leaving?
Right.
Yeah, I kind of echo what Jeremiah just said about the importance of starting that relationship with the clients at the beginning of the case and carrying that through. And that's something that we really value at our firm. And we keep our caseload low. And we do that so that we can spend that extra time with our clients all the way through to trial. And that is something that I really value as a part of our new practice.
Yeah, because I think about like the audience, obviously it's a lot of it's, obviously law students and people who are thinking, how do they want to be when they're out practicing? What do they want to focus on? And to me, the most overlooked thing in law school, and it is just inherent in the system of the law school, is the humanity of the practice and the people you're helping. It is so easy to overlook the fact that your clients are going through so many different things in their life that they are just simply overwhelmed by the whole process of a lawsuit, but beyond that, like the medical care, not knowing what doctor to go to, and how are they going to keep their house and their job, and all these different things. And as lawyers, they want they want to know you're listening. They want to know you're there for them, that you're thinking about all those things. And it's so easy to overlook when you're new in the law and you're just trying to know, okay, what is the law? What do I need to do? And I need to respond to written discovery, and I need to do these things. And you forget about calling the client. You forget about stopping over to their house and saying, just want to come and check in on you. I just want to see how things are going to their medical appointment, just doing those things. That's what makes all the difference at the end. They will never remember. I mean, they'll know how much money you got them one way or the other, but they will remember how you treated them and how you cared for them. And none of that happens behind the desk in front of the computer. It always happens outside of your office and what you did to show them you care. That is probably, if I could say one thing to just as if to my youngest self coming out of law school, is don't overlook the importance of client communication all throughout the entire process, the very beginning to the very end. And that is why you cannot have a high caseload and do that.
I think it's a really, really important lesson for our students to hear. And, I hear the same sorts of lessons from our most successful attorneys. And I know that that's not why you're saying it, but I find a correlation between the best attorneys, the attorneys that are the most humane, that care the most about their clients, they tend to achieve the most success, right? And I know they're two different things, the business side of things and the human side of things. My fiance has a quote on our refrigerator. I think it's by Maya Angelou, and it's something to do with people don't remember what you said or what you did, but they remember how you made them feel.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I think that is exactly what you're trying to say, because when it comes to this profession, if you just look at a client as a number on a page, you're never going to make that connection with them, and you're never going to do the things that I think at the end of the day, that's why most people are in law school. They want to help people, and they want to be that person. So that's a really important lesson that I hope some of our viewers will take home with them today. Victoria, what are some of the attributes that you find about yourself that have allowed you so much success in this field? I know that we sort of mentioned it in the beginning of the podcast. We've had attorneys on. It used to be a male-dominated profession, in my opinion. And we're seeing, a lot more of an even playing field in terms of gender today, statistically speaking. What has been your experience coming up and rising through the ranks, either starting from your time as a law clerk at Gomez up until now?
Yeah, I would say one of the most important things that I've learned about myself, and that has been just the thing that made me happiest and felt most fulfilled in my career, that I didn't really understand in college and in law school, was just being myself. Stop trying to be someone that you think you should be in law school, or that, legal movies, that depict the courtroom tell you should be. I am a friendly, kind of sensitive and emotional person. I can connect with our clients. And I think that when I turned that into one of my strengths, as opposed to maybe feeling like I was not aggressive enough. Well, there's a way to be yourself and to make that effective. And I think as a female in the legal profession, we tend to be underestimated, especially if you're nice and you're not hammering someone in the way that they typically think you would. And I've realized you can make that work to your advantage, and let them underestimate you. Let them think that you don't understand what's going on, or that, maybe in a deposition, they're not listening as you're asking questions, because they think that they went in thinking, oh, well, it's a female lawyer, and they may have just written you off. But I've found that has worked in my favor every single time. I just keep being friendly, keep being honest and open. There's, no need to do anything other than that. If you have your case and you believe in it and you're on the right side of the law, then it works out. And that goes with communicating with the opposing counsel, and, some have been very aggressive and very rude and very demeaning, and just can't control that.
Yeah.
And once I let that go, I felt so much better just as a lawyer. I stopped letting it make me feel like I maybe wasn't in the right profession, because there's times when it feels that way or felt that way. And once I accepted it, I just feel so much more confident as a lawyer, as a female lawyer for sure. And I think it's just affected every area of our practice in a positive way.
And it can only go so far if you're trying to be someone that you're not,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Because you can only pretend for so long before either someone finding out that you're different than the way that you're trying to portray yourself, or really just before you get exhausted with it, right? It's tough to act all of the time. And I think that being yourself in this profession in particular, because there are so many stereotypes like you're talking about, the aggressive trial attorney, you have to be a certain way in order to be successful. If you're trying to correct all of the things that you don't have about your personality, you're really not highlighting your good features. And I'll tell a quick story. My father was a trial attorney for 35 years in New Jersey. And he's this towering figure, right? He's 6'5". He's just like this big guy. Played baseball in college and everything. And people would always assume that he was going to be the most aggressive attorney and get into court and fight with witnesses and stuff. And he was the opposite. He was like known in his law firm as like, he's the big softy, who would, during a closing argument in a really sad case, he would just burst into tears. And I think that it was those parts of his personality that he didn't hide, that he tried to be himself all of the time, that led to his success. So I love that as a lesson, right? Because especially I would think for a female attorney coming up in the field, you're trying to figure out what type of lawyer should I be, or who do other people want me to be, when really the most important thing is to be yourself, and that will lead to a successful career, hopefully, but really a more easygoing life as well beyond the practice of law, right?
I agree, and it's going to show. You can do what you can to try to pretend to be someone else, but I always think of when we get up on our feet in front of a jury, they can tell. They can tell when witnesses are being dishonest. It's clear, and I think that connection is so important with them, and so you have to be authentic, because we're trying to tell someone else's story, and if we're not being true to ourselves, how can we tell our client's story and tell that accurately? And that's the most important part.
I agree. I want to ask you another follow-up question on this, because I think a few of the guests that I've had on that are female that I've had on, I sort of make this assumption myself. And I'm like, talk to us a little bit about the work-life balance, right? Where, and my guests have all surprised me, and I don't want to make that same mistake in this interview today. So what I'll usually ask them is, what is the work-life balance like, or how are you able to overcome some of those hurdles that maybe men don't have to overcome? And what I have found is that, I'm basing this off of stereotypes that existed maybe a while ago, whereas it seems to be more of a lot of marriages are more of equal partnerships now. Both parties are working and both parties are raising a family. What has your experience been to that extent? I mean, am I off base here with any? I don't want to make any of these assumptions, but I think it's important for our audience to hear.
No, I don't think you're off base. It's a challenge. And I think as a woman who went through law school, I knew I wanted to have a successful career, but I'm also married and I want a family. And it's a challenge, and it's not easy. And I would want to talk to the person who says it's easy, because it's hard and you're working a lot, and it's important to work because this is what we worked for. So what's made it possible for me is having a partner who is so supportive and understands.
Is this your spouse, or is this your work partner?
No,
Everyone, I suppose.
I was referring to my husband.
Right.
But he's also a lawyer, but he gets it, and we kind of talked about it going into the relationship. We've been together for almost a decade now. It's part of it, and I've kind of said, this is what I'm doing, and he's 100% in. And what that will look like when we have kids, I think it's going to be a challenge. But that was something that early on I kind of knew I'm going to put in even more time now so that maybe later on I can have that freedom. I thought maybe I'll have my own firm and I could maybe step back a little bit, have a family, have that flexibility. So it was worth it to me to really grind in the first few years of being a lawyer, which I think gave me the opportunities to get to where I am now. So no, there was not a lot of balance then. And I think that's the same for everybody. And the pressures of feeling like you should be doing something else as a female is that's still there. I still feel it. I see other, people doing things with their lives, and it's like, maybe I should be doing that too. Am I doing something wrong? And it's kind of goes back to, nope, this is where I'm at. Be comfortable with that, be proud of your success, and just keep going.
Yeah, and in starting your own firm, I assume you probably had a similar experience as me where you think it's going to come with a lot of freedom, and sometimes it comes with a lot more responsibility. But I agree. I think having a spouse that's supportive is really important. My fiance is not an attorney, but she watches a lot of Law and Order and sometimes thinks she is, and is really supportive. And I agree with you. I think that's really an important part of it. Bring me into the decision, okay, before starting your own firm of Lowe and Lazar Law. When is this conversation first brought up, and what's that? Bring us into that conversation a little bit. Like, how, I think what our audience is really looking for here is, how do you know it's time, right? How do you know when is the right time? So what was it for you guys?
Yeah, well, there is one of the things I've learned, there is no right time. You always will feel like it's never the right time because it's the element of fear. Like, you're always going to be fearful of the unknown, and it's always what stops us from taking the leap of faith. For me personally, I got to a point where I felt like it had run its course for me personally, and I was ready to do something different that was completely on my own terms, where I felt like I was in control of the direction of my firm and what I wanted to do in my practice. And so it came time where it just felt as right as it was going to be to do that, to make that transition. And so I knew that when I was getting ready to do that, the person I wanted to be in practice with was somebody that I could trust, who I've already been working with, that I could say, I know this would be a person to start a partnership with because we've been working on a team together. So once it got to the point where I said, okay, I know this is right for me, she was the first person I talked to. I said, Victoria, I want you to know I am leaving, and I'm gonna, start something new, and I would love for you to come with me if you want to. I had no pressure, but that was, that's basically, I think, for me, just knowing it was the right time for me personally, and then the rest just kind of snowballs. Things just happen quickly from there.
And it takes a lot of guts to do that, right? I mean, in taking that leap of faith, either in deciding that you want to go out on your own and you're going to start your own firm and leave this firm of Gomez that has achieved so much success and helped you achieve so much success over those years. And for Victoria as well, to trust in you that this is the right decision, and for you to take that leap of faith. I mean, I think that it takes a certain type of person to do that. And what I'm finding here, this is my own theory on this, but what I'm finding here in San Diego, especially, is that there are a lot of these type of entrepreneurial people, these brave people who will go out on their own and who want to start their own firms, whether for whatever reason. I know you guys are both you're from Ohio, and Victoria, you grew up where?
San Bernardino, so Southern California.
In San Bernardino, okay. And I know a lot of my friends that I meet here are not San Diego residents. A lot of people are from these other areas, and they've decided at some point in their, in their past to take a leap of faith and to come here. And I think that breeds a lot of entrepreneurial type of people. I'm also finding that a lot of law students today have this in mind. They want to start their own practice. A lot of students want to do it right out of law school and think to themselves, I've passed the bar and I'm ready to go hang my shingle. But a lot of people think to themselves, if I get some experience, I can do this. So for those people who are entrepreneurial, what advice would you have for them? Someone who wants to start their own practice. Victoria, let's start with you.
So obviously that wasn't my path to start my own business until well into practice. But even thinking now, what has allowed me to be able to do this, and of course with Jeremiah, but it's been the attorneys that I've learned from, and really leaning on that knowledge and experience that they've passed on to me. And so at our prior firm, I had the opportunity to not only work with Jeremiah, but some other really amazing trial lawyers, and they have stayed close as a mentor or as just a sounding board for ideas. And so whether you're at the very beginning of your practice or 8 years in, having resources like that, make those connections. And because there's always going to be new issues. We could encounter new issues every day. It's one of the greatest parts I think about what we do. It's not boring, that's for sure.
Right.
And so having those people that you can bounce ideas off of and collaborate with is huge.
Jeremiah, what would you say?
Yeah, similar to Victoria, I was with a firm. I was with Gomez firm for over 12 years. I was also at another firm for a couple of years, learning, doing some defense work where I learned sort of the other side of it to start. So for me, I think the learning the how to practice was important for me. That I would have a hard time recommending somebody just go out on their own without ever working at a firm, wherever it is, just because I think there's a process that you learn in terms of the A to Z, the nuts and bolts of litigation that would be helpful to be in a firm. But if you are really going to go out on your own, where you do not want to start with a firm at all, my best recommendation is get involved in organizations, like be a part of CASD, be a part of the various Inns of Court and ABTL or the different. There's a bunch of organizations where you network and you get to know people, but you form groups within groups of colleagues where you form friendships, and those are the people then you learn from and you collaborate with. So you have sounding board. You're not on your own. So I would really recommend focusing on the networking part of it, and also with your law school friends. The people that you went to law school with, maintain relationships with them, because they will be really valuable resources as you get into your practice, and be very helpful. So surrounding yourself with people wherever you can in the legal field, I think is critically important. But I don't know. I've always wondered how people could go out on their own without learning it first.
Yeah.
But I suppose that's like anything else in life. Like you learn as you go, kind of a thing.
Yeah, sometimes it's better to do that in other professions
Yeah.
than you don't want to doctor or a lawyer sometimes. It's like, hey, it's my first case. I don't know what I'm doing here, but I've got a feeling it's going to work out.
But there is some element to that. No matter when you try your first case, there is that feeling of like, oh, I really don't know if I know what I'm doing. Like, I don't know if I know what I'm doing. And then you realize, okay, you get through it and you're like, okay, I guess I can do this. And then you do it again, and the more reps you get, like anything, the more comfortable you get. So you got to get that first rep at some point anyway. But for young lawyers, my best advice is like, go find a mentor, find somebody that you can, carry their briefcase and just go sit and watch them pick a jury, watch them give an opening statement, help in any way you can, just to learn, because that learning process is very, very steep. And you need that. The law school does not prepare you for that stuff. It just doesn't. Nobody gets prepared to how to try a case.
We've sort of started with the end here, and let me directly examine you guys and bring you back to the beginning. Okay, so I think a lot of our guests, they'd like to know a little bit about your past, just to figure out how you got where you are, right? So bring us back to Victoria in elementary school, growing up in San Bernardino, and Jeremiah as a little kid running around Ohio with his little Cleveland Browns jersey on.
True.
I mean, did you guys always have this stand up for the little guy mentality when you were growing up, or did you have a mentor in your life growing up that taught you some of these lessons that you've now taken with you today?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mentioned before, I didn't have any lawyers in my family. So kind of growing up, I just kind of knew I wanted to work hard and be happy in whatever profession I decided. And I have wonderful parents who didn't push me in any direction. And so it was just, I could choose. And I loved that. But you have to choose at some point. So I kind of always felt that pressure, but it worked out okay. But no, I didn't. No, my dad just set the best example of being such a hard worker. That parents have owned their own business my entire life, and they work so hard. And I watched them go through struggles at various times, and it really lit a fire under me because my dad I've never heard him one day say, "I don't want to go to work today." He never, ever said that. And I have never forgotten that. And so he is just set the best example. And so when I said I wanted to go, to San Diego for college, they said, "Great, go for it." But not really, okay, so here's what you got to do. You got to do this, this, and this. I kind of thought, okay, I want to research online and figure it out. And same with law school. And I kind of figured it out as I went. But I think that kind of made me who I am as a lawyer because I just kept inserting myself in really unknown, uncomfortable situations. I mean, starting back in high school, I switched high schools in the middle of sophomore year, which is like high school suicide. You have no friends, you don't know anybody. And I just kept doing that. And I'd say my advice would be, put yourself in those uncomfortable situations. It's character building, and the opportunities present themselves.
What did your parents say when you told them that you were going to law school, or that when you first found out that you were accepted into law school? You went to Cal West, right?
Mm-hmm.
What did your parents say when you opened that letter and told them the results?
They were so excited. They said, "Wow, what's next? What do you do next?" And I said, "I don't know." But they have just been my biggest cheerleaders every step of the way. And I swear, opening my, our own firm and starting my own business, my dad is a business owner. He is just, really, every time we're on the phone, he tells me how proud of me he is. And that's awesome. That's all I need. That's such, personal satisfaction. So.
Yeah. Jeremiah, do you have a similar story growing up? Were there lawyers in your family, or how did you decide that you wanted to go into this field?
Well, like I said, my dad was a trial lawyer, and I remember growing up, and I would see him always at his computer. He was writing a book on product liability, which, nobody cared to hear about. But I remember the old school computers, the ones that are the old Mac. It had the little Apple in the bottom. It had the flat keyboard, but it was literally the first computer ever. And I just remember coming home from school, and at night, it was dinner time, and he would always be on that thing, just typing away, and his commitment to what he was doing. And he'd always want to talk about the work. And again, nobody wanted to hear about it because it's so boring. I was just but it's the fact that he cared so much about what he was doing every day for years and years and years. And, granted, I probably didn't see him as much growing up. My parents got divorced when I was 6, and I would go out to dinner with them on Wednesday nights, and I would see him on Sundays. So we had really great time together. That was our time, right? That we were focused on. But I've always looked back and thought, hey, maybe they grew apart. Maybe work, balance wasn't there. He worked so hard that I wondered, if I'm a lawyer, will I have enough balance for my family, or will it, interfere with that? And so I think in some ways, it showed me the importance of hard work and doing something you really believe in. But at the same time, I think it's always kept a focus on making sure I'm present for family. And he was always present. He's very close in my life to this day. But I think it's easy to lose sight of time when you're practicing. You know, he worked really late hours all the time and was in trial a lot. And so I see the life of a trial lawyer from that perspective as a kid, and I never want my, my days as in my retirement days to look back and say, I didn't spend enough time with my children. I did not spend enough time with my wife, and finding that balance. And so I think growing up with a very loving household, both my parents very loving, brothers, we're all very tight family. Hard work was really instilled upon us at a young age, but the importance of family and quality time was also equally important. And that, to me, always will take priority over anything.
It's good that you guys both seem to come from families where your parents were very hardworking, and it didn't turn you off to this field that does require so much hard work, right? Because I think that what you're saying is very true, Jeremiah. You can see sometimes if a person's working too hard, or just if they're working hard and even enjoying it. If you're going into a field, sometimes you're like, man, I don't know if I'm going to love it that much where I'm doing it and working as hard as that person. And you almost feel like it can be scary to enter a field like that if you don't have that same passion for something. So I think it's a inspirational thing where kind of what we talked about in the beginning, we were taking some of the good stuff about some of what your parents did and leaving the rest, right? Is that you want to take some of that good stuff and leave the rest behind. How did you guys decide that Cal West was the school for you, right? Because a lot of our students, a majority of our law students that are listening in are USD students. I've seen a lot of things that Cal West does very, very well. So one of the programs that I coach for here is the USD trial team. And Cal West, without fail, is always our toughest competition. They just have a fantastic trial team. I also think they have amazing externships where they allow their students credits for working while they're in law school. So what were some of the factors that went into the decision to go there as a student?
For me, in talking to people when deciding to go to Cal Western, it was really the programs they have that get students ready to practice. It was very practical. They have a lot of lawyers who are practicing in the community who come and teach classes, and their legal skills program is exceptional. We were working on an MSJ, and that's something that I do in my practice now. And I just felt very prepared. I felt like it would prepare me for the actual practice. And, I think you have to have a balance of that, of course. But that was one of my big reasons. Also, I wanted to be on the trial team, and the coaches and the program is just, it's incredible.
How did you do on the trial team there?
I did fine. We didn't win any of the competitions, but it was so much work, as I'm sure students here who know. And if you're deciding to do it, my advice would be to do it. I'm sure, it's just the skills and humility and confidence, it all at the same time that you build, that you can take into, I think, any area of the law it's invaluable.
I've tried to tell my students many times before that it's just something you won't realize. I sound like an old man when I say this. You won't realize it until you look back on this experience, but it's one of those things where even at a firm where you have the best mentor in the world, you have someone who you can ask all questions to and everything, you still won't have the same oversight that you do when you're on a trial team at school, where you have these coaches who are making you do your closing argument in front of them 20 times, judges critiquing, giving you feedback, go back, rework it, do it again. I mean, that for one semester would be one thing, and doing it over the course of 2 years, I mean, I think that I attribute that to honing my trial skills almost more than anything else in my practice. Jeremiah, what went into your decision to go to Cal West, and what were some of the internships or classes that you've taken there that you can recommend for our students?
Yeah, so first, I knew I wanted to stay in San Diego. I moved out here after college, and I was like, I just want to stay in San Diego because I want to be here.
Yeah.
I felt like I could maybe, stay here for a long term.
The winters in Ohio aren't 70.
I got out of that snow. I was like, there's no way. But I went to actually undergrad. I went to Arizona. I went to ASU, and so once I got a taste of the warm weather, I'm like, I'm just not going back.
Yeah.
It's like too deserty there. I'm gonna come out here. So I wanted to be out here, and then I don't think my options were even that broad in terms of where. I don't think I would have even got into, even if I had applied to USD, I'm sure I wouldn't have gotten in. So I think there were only 2 schools out here, in Cal Western and Thomas Jefferson, and so I think I just applied to Cal Western, and I remember, so it's interesting because I didn't know your story about like the practicum, but I remember learning about what they said about the externship stuff too, and that we help find jobs for you. I'm like, wow, that would be really helpful. So because I didn't really know anybody out here in the legal community, I was like, okay, maybe I'll do that. But in terms of what things in law school helped me, I mean, it's interesting that we're all talking about the trial team stuff because it's so true. Like that, it's just the practice, like getting on your feet and doing something where you're like, I need to present in front of people. I need to see how do I speak and what is my posture and all the nonverbal stuff that goes into communication. I felt like doing the mock stuff, the trial team stuff was so valuable because it allows us to kind of look back and see, like you do videos of it, and you look back and you see yourself, and you're like, whoa, I have these tics. I say like every other word or whatever. And that stuff matters so much and builds a lot of confidence in communicating.
Yeah.
So I think of all the things that if I had to say for a law student to go and do, just do something in practice to go out there and do the trial team, whether it be the moot court for the appellate stuff or the trial team stuff, whatever. But that is really important.
I swear we didn't rehearse this. This isn't a self-promotion here for the trial team or anything
Very
like that.
true stuff, though.
But you bring up the videotaping, I think, which is really important too, because there are so many things now that I don't think were available to a generation before us, right? And not that video cameras weren't invented at the time that my father may have practiced law, but just everyone has their cell phone camera now. You have little tripods you can buy for $15 on Amazon or just whatever. And I remember in law school we had a class where it wasn't a trial team, but it was a trial litigation skills class. Yeah. And they would film us, and then they would have judges from the community, lawyers from the community critique us, but then we also had a one-on-one with actors. And these actors would teach us body posture and how to present yourself and deliver yourself, and I found it so, so helpful. We talked a little bit about it with a guest that I had on up in LA named Brian Brighter. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Brighter Law at all, but he's active on the listservs and teaches some classes, specifically classes on what's it called when you're acting off the cuff?
Improv.
Yes, he does the improv, and the way that he teaches it, he makes all of the attorneys at his firm take these classes because he's like, it's so important to read someone's body language and posture, and if you're looking at the jury while something's going on, you can tell what's working and what's not, whereas a lot of those skills are not necessarily taught to us in law school. So I think that that's an important thing as well. Not that every law school has those available to them, but maybe you guys can take some acting classes or something like that. And,
I would love to.
Right? Wouldn't that be cool? Take us from law school to your first jobs now, okay? Victoria, I know that you mentioned that you had been a law clerk at Gomez and then worked your way up there. Jeremiah, did you have, it sounded like you had a pretty eclectic career before law school. You were in sales and stuff like that. Can you kind of take us through some of that stuff? I'm interested to know where you worked in sales. I'm also interested to hear how you got your first job in the law.
It was and actually I do think this was like the sort of defining trigger in terms of making the decision to go to law school. I was working, and I don't even remember the name of the country. I mean, the company. It was a debt consolidation stuff, like where you have the headset and you're doing the sales, and making actually a lot of money to be right out of like college and be earning the kind of money that we were earning. I was feeling like, oh my God, I hate this work, but I don't care. I'm making like good money, and I'm living in San Diego, and all the people I was working with were all just recent college grads. So everybody, we were all partying all the, it's just fun.
Right.
It was and then it was almost like maybe, I don't know, like 6-9 months in, or I started getting calls from people that we had sold these things to that were like, oh, I didn't get what I was told I was getting and all this stuff. And we had a script, exactly what we were telling them. And I realized that a lot of what they were being told was just not true.
Wow.
It was a total, like, kind of a scam type company. And so I basically reported it right away to them. They were kind of like, the management was like, you always direct them to this line, and the whole thing. They didn't want to deal with it. So I gave people my cell phone number, and they were calling. And so as soon as I got that, I gave them all the information to the Better Bureau, and I reported them to the Better Bureau, and I quit because I was like, this is just awful. And then I thought, this company, A, needs to be shut down, and B, like, I would rather go fight against these companies and screwing over people, and helping the people that are getting screwed over than, selling debt consolidation packages that's totally, misrepresenting what they're selling.
Wow.
So that experience really definitely forced my rethinking of, like, sales and business, because it just was not, wasn't a legitimate business. So I said I'd much rather do something of, significant value to the community.
That's so interesting. Did that spark your interest in the law? I mean, getting involved in something that had a legal flair to it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that maybe at some level, because I knew I just, like, I'll go to law school and it'll give me more opportunities to see what I want to do, because I don't want to do this kind of work, right? I don't want to do this kind of sales work. But I do think I had that thought, like, oh, I would love to sue this company. I would love to sue this company. I wish I could remember the name. I'm sure they shut down and opened up under a new name. Who knows?
Right.
But yeah, I did feel like I wanted to get some justice against them. But I reported them, but I'm sure nothing happened.
The Better Business Bureau, you never know.
But yeah, so I think that sales was really the only job in between college and then going to law school. And then right when I got out of law school, before I joined John's firm, the Gomez firm, I had started clerking at Craig McClellan's office, who was also sort of a stalwart in the community.
Yeah.
And taught me a whole lot about, personal injury and the practice of law. And I don't know that there's anybody out there that's been doing it longer than he has in a way that he's been doing it, and really impressive lawyer, and learned a lot from working there through law school.
Talk about someone who has a business model that it sounds like you guys are trying to follow after. It's amazing. I mean, he takes on a very, very select few amount of cases.
Yeah.
I've been fortunate enough to be in his office one time, and it's like you walk down that hallway to his office. He just has $1 million checks, like, framed and printed, like, along the walls. You're like, oh my gosh. Then he's sitting there. He doesn't smoke, but in my head it's just like there's, like, smoke in the room. He's like a lion in, like, his den, and he's just like, come on in. And he's just the nicest guy ever, but just has this intimidating quality about him.
Yes.
But he came up in a very similar sort of I guess not setting, but it seemed like he came up with these all-star attorneys that have established themselves in the field. The way that you were describing your original attorneys that you came up with, it sounded like they were sort of the generation before that.
Mm-hmm.
And
For sure.
I've had a podcast guest on also that worked with Craig at a firm in the past. Really just a great guy and doing some really, really great work. It's pretty incredible. Also, the top of the list, every time you Google personal injury attorneys. He's got good
SEO.
He's got great SEO.
Good SEO for sure.
He's first to the market on that.
Yes.
So how did you get from there to Gomez? Because I thought that you had mentioned that you were at a defense firm as well.
Yeah. So when I started clerking, John Gomez was at Craig McClellan's office before John had started his own firm. So I was with Craig, and then right when I got out of law school, Craig had hired me, and it was only about, I think, maybe 6 months while I had been there, and I really I felt so overwhelmed. John had just left. It was at that point just Craig and I think one other lawyer. And I felt really incompetent. Like I did not feel like I was good enough, and I didn't feel like I was doing my part. And I remember having a meeting with Craig, and Craig's like, I'm not sure that like this is going to work out long term. He's like, I'm not firing you right now or anything, but look for something else. And that crushed me. I just said, I'm going to get out of the field altogether. I'm not good at this. This is just one of those things. And then I ended up getting actually John, because I had called John, said, listen, I'm doing something different. Can I give you my, can you give me I put your name down as a referral for a recommendation for this other company doing management. He's like, well, yeah, sure, but, don't leave the practice. You're just starting. You're going to be fine. Just, stick with it. So he's like, a buddy of mine, Joel Bryant, who's also a really great lawyer in the community. He's like, is looking for somebody just for like summer, contract work. Work with him until you land on your feet. So I worked with Joel for the summer. We had a great, time there. And then during that period, Doug Walters, Walters and Coyote, was looking for a lawyer who had some plaintiff's experience and also could do some defense, so that because they had kind of a mixed bag over there. And
is Coyote the same as the judge right now?
Yeah,
or
Carolyn Coyote. Yeah. So her husband, Bob Coyote. At that time, gotcha. Carolyn was there too. Was just getting ready to leave to join the bench, but it was Bob Coyote and Doug Walters, and then another lawyer, Cherie Enge, who was doing State Farm work. And so they said, so Bob and Doug hired me over there, and I was there for like 2 years, maybe a year and a half, learning the defense side. And then John had basically called me up when he was getting ready to add one more lawyer at the time. And he's like, are you interested in coming back to the plaintiff's practice? Because now I'm starting to grow. I'm going to add another lawyer. And that's how I ended up getting hooked up with John, because I had stayed connected with him during the time that I was, at the other firms. And it's actually like as a lesson, right? And to the law students is like, never burn bridges. Never burn bridges, because you never know how things will come back around. Right. And so, maintaining relationships really helped one job to another. And, that moment of like probably the time where I was going to leave the practice altogether because I just did not feel like I was good at this, led to opportunity, then to another opportunity. And, over time you gain the skills to become competent. And as long as you stick with it, you'll get through it. So I think a lot of law students face that, where there's moments where you feel like you're not good at it, you're not going to be good at it, and you want to quit. And if you have enough confidence to stick with it and have people helping you along, you will succeed.
I think the bigger problem is usually when you think you're the best at it, coming right out of law school, right? Yeah. Because there's a lot to learn that you're just like, okay, that might be someone who might not be cut for the job. If you feel like you're not on the same level as the guys that you're describing, as the John Gomez's and the Craig McClellans, when you're a first year lawyer, I think you probably have a more self-awareness than a lot of people who are in that same position.
Yeah, that's true. The ones that think they know everything will get put in place pretty quickly by the law. It won't even be another person. Right. The law itself will take care of that.
Victoria, it sounded like you started as a clerk at Gomez and stayed there for a while. Is that true? Is that the one place that you were at before starting your own firm?
Yeah, I started clerking there during law school. I had clerked at a few other places during law school, and then I'd worked at a number of other firms before law school just to try out a bunch of areas of the law. But yes, once starting at Gomez, there was a very brief period where the firm went through some difficult times, and I was let go. And just like Jeremiah was saying, don't burn those bridges. I kept up the relationship with John and with Jeremiah, and 6 weeks later, Jeremiah called me. Wow. And I went back, and that was very, very difficult, but I ended up right back where I was supposed to be, and then stayed there until we started our own practice.
It seems like having been in a situation like that in your past, you were probably more sympathetic towards something like that happening and paying it forward. And it seems like, a valuable lesson to learn. Is that something that you guys are doing now in your practice as well? Are there people that have been keeping in touch with you that you're thinking of bringing on or have brought on in this practice?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, you realize when you start your own practice, how relationships and friendships like matter, because we have such a sort of a welcoming group of lawyers and colleagues around this area that have reached out and offered help like in any way possible.
Wow.
It's just been really supportive. And yes, we stay in touch with people that have been important to us, and whether or not we ultimately ever bring anyone on, or how we expand, we're going to stay small. Like, we don't want to be a big firm. We're going to be a small firm, boutique firm, doing important cases. The Craig McClellan model, honestly, that is the model we're trying to adhere to. Or Jude Basile, who's a mentor of mine. Small, stay lean, stay small, but do important cases. But with that said, like, we still stay in touch with the people that are important, who have been important to us and who we've tried to mentor that are younger, to make sure that they continue to have very successful careers, because we've always had that support from others, and we want to be that for the people that we have been fortunate enough to help mentor, and we've had that opportunity through the clerk program.
Do you guys, I'm sorry, what is the clerk program?
Yeah, so at the Gomez firm, they take on a lot of clerks, not to say a lot, but a handful of clerks each semester, and that's how we've had the privilege of working with some really great young students in the law schools, USD
gotcha.
students, and so we've maintained relationships with those that have come through that program.
Gotcha. Okay. I forget where I was going to go with that before you mentioned the clerk program, but I guess when you think about your practice and you decide this is the vision for it, I mean, is that something that you guys came up with together? Is that
Mm-hmm.
Jeremiah, was that your idea and you brought Victoria on board? Is that something that you guys discussed together? Because that's another decision, right? Is if I am going out on my own, I think it's a lot easier said than done for everyone to say, yes, we want to remain small. We want to have a select few of cases.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have the financial backing,
Mm-hmm.
it's very difficult to just say, well, I'm just going to take 10 cases on. They're going to be, 6 or 7 figures. That's all I need, right? Or something like that. Whereas I think a lot of people fall into this model of maybe becoming more of a mill type of law firm because they can't afford to just have a select group of cases.
Yes.
So, how did you guys make that decision and, go more toward that Craig McClellan model of
Right.
business?
So that timing is everything on that. And if you start out, you're not going to have, those cases aren't going to come to you, because who's going to want to send you one of their big cases? The reason those cases come to us is because we have had success in trial. And so that there's a element of, you have to walk the walk to get those cases. And the way we ultimately get those cases are lawyers that don't try cases. There are a number of lawyers who are great lawyers. They just don't try cases. They're not trial lawyers, and that's fine. It's those relationships that ultimately allow us to work on those cases. But in order to work on those cases, you can't run a mill and still do those cases. We have to be ready to try those cases. And so that's how to build that model, is to go to trial and prove that you can have good results. And I don't think it is easy to do that on your own, right? I think doing it at a firm is a much safer space to do that.
Right.
That's partly why I'm not a huge fan of going straight out on your own out of law school, because I think that's really hard to not have any real financial resources and then say, I'm going to go take this case to trial and spend $75,000 to try this case. I don't know how anybody does that. I would never have been able to do that.
Right.
But once you've tried a few cases and then somebody calls you and says, hey, I want to bring you in on this case, then that's what builds those relationships, and that's how you build the inventory of those cases. And then the key is continue trying cases. I mean, that is the absolute key. Is you cannot just say, what have you done for me lately? You cannot sit back and just be like, well, I tried some cases and therefore I'm going to constantly get these, cases coming to me. No, you've got to consistently show that you're willing to go into a trial and fight the fight that a lot of people don't want to fight and be successful. And that is the way we intend to continue to build on the model that we have formed, is keep it small but try cases.
Yeah, and that's a really important concept, right? Because even if you have established a reputation as a trial attorney working for a firm, when you go out on your own at your own firm, you might get on the phone with an insurance adjuster and they're going to say, oh, just send me your employer ID number or tell me the name of your law firm again. They'll be like, I don't know this firm, right? I'm not going to settle this case for a fair value here. And if you aren't litigating cases or pushing cases through trial to verdict, then insurance companies will take advantage of your clients and you won't get full value for their cases. That's a really
100%.
important concept as well.
100%, and that's what we have made sure to be clear with the defense and the adjusters and back it up that we're still going to trial. And so the most recent settlement we had was literally on the doorsteps of trial. They tried to settle it and offer nuisance value for what the case was. And you just made it real easy. Say, oh, let's just go to trial. And then once you get to trial, they start thinking differently.
Well, you've made a great transition for us and for me. So let's talk a little bit about that. You guys have had some very recent success, a lot of success recently when you started your own firm, which is just not an easy thing to do. So talk to us about this settlement in particular. Was it something that you both worked on together? And is that your practice as well? Do you work on every case together the way that you had before, or do you guys have your own separate cases as well?
No, we work together on the cases. But I'll let you kind of address that most recent case.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about it, Victoria. Can you tell us any facts or details, maybe John Doe versus defendant, and tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so this was an auto versus tractor case out in El Centro, so a little bit further east, and our client was driving out on one of those 2-lane roads in the middle of fields. Out there was a lot of agriculture, and a tractor turned in front of him as he was legally passing. And I think when a lot of people hear someone was passing, we live in a city, that's kind of a risky move to make. But when you are out in a more agricultural area, there's less cars on the road, and that is what you do, and it's legal.
So 2 lanes, one in each direction.
Yes, exactly.
Right? So he's legally passing and going around this tractor.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And tractors are, you're going 50, 55, and a tractor is going 12 miles per hour. And that sounds, I think, even faster than it actually is. It's incredibly slow. And so he's passing and a tractor turns and in front of him as he's going far too fast to be able to avoid it. And so he sustained serious injury to his knee, and it was a big crash. And we just pushed it. We had it from the day one. He was our client from the first time he came to the firm, and we continued representing him in our new firm. And we were, I would say, the drivers of this case the entire time. I think that happens far too often, where you maybe have someone on the other side who's just sitting back and not really doing anything on the case. And you can either do the same and let the case, the evidence get stale as you get to the deadline set by the court, or you can push it forward. And that's really what we did. We were deposing the police officer, the paramedics, they took our client's deposition, but we really wanted to prepare this case for trial from the very beginning. And we did. And by the time we got to trial, they weren't ready. They hadn't done that prep, and we were. Our experts were ready, and it showed. And so other than going to trial out in El Centro, which we were absolutely mentally prepared to do. We were ready to go, which is, out of town is a whole different thing. But, it resolved. It was the best thing for our client at the time.
Yeah, it's interesting, like going back to what I was talking about the relationships with the client and spending time. So we had spent time with not just the family. We had gone out there, spent time with them, but we got to know He's a baseball coach, so we went out and we spent time getting to know the other baseball coach, the varsity coach that he was coaching with, and just learned about his passion for baseball. With a knee injury, how it's difficult when you're teaching the kids, the high school kids, how to swing a bat. It's hard to do that when you have a broken patella. And obviously it was repaired, but with that kind of injury, it makes it more difficult. So we spent time getting to know his baseball coach, his sister, his brother, somebody from his work who worked with him to talk about. He works for Caltrans, how it's kind of difficult for him to do something. He still does it. He does the work on the side of the freeway, but how difficult it is. They didn't know any of that. The defense had never bothered to take any of those depositions. So we were going to go into trial and tell this really powerful story about how affected his life has been and how it's different with his young children. And baseball was different for him. And, family get-togethers are different. Work is different. And we were going to tell a really powerful story. And until they realized, they don't have a defense on that stuff because they didn't do the work to even, gather the information. And even if they did, it wouldn't have been good for them. But the bottom line is, we had a story to tell. And we knew we had a story to tell, which is why we were never feeling cornered to settle the case, even though they were trying to make it sound like, well, there's some disputed liability issues here, and this is a broken knee case, and it's El Centro, and you don't see any big verdicts out of El Centro. And none of that matters. If you have a story to tell and you have a good client, you care about your client, he's a good person, or she's a good person, that's what matters. It does not matter what venue you're in. I'm sure it matters a little bit, but if you have a story to tell and it's a righteous story, then you can be successful in trial. And you don't even have to be good at presenting. I think you just have to be authentic and credible. At that point, you don't have to put on a show. Just let the witnesses control the story and the narrative, and you will be successful. And adjusters, at the end of the day, will see that, but they're not going to care or see it until they know you're really going to trial and going to tell that story.
Right.
And that's, I think, the lesson that we continue to remind ourselves, because it's a constant reminder that you cannot expect to get full value on cases until you get to all rise or at that point. And that was, again, I consider him my mentor is Jude Basil, who's one of the greatest trial lawyers in the country, part of the inner circle of trial advocates, is top 100 in the country. I tried a case with him that a couple years ago changed my sort of whole path in terms of my vision. But his mantra is just get to all rise. Just get to all rise. Everything will take care of itself if you get to trial. And that is hard sometimes to see, but when you're in that sort of grind. But that really is the moral of that story is you work up your case the right way and then just get to trial.
So you guys have both used this term now, and I want to clear it up for our students who might not know what it means. When you talk about working up a case or, as Victoria said, pushing a case forward, I think a lot of students, when they first start practicing, this is something I hear, right? I started at a firm, they gave me 20 cases to start, right? And I'm excited. And I've sent out for the medical records, and now I'm waiting, right? I'm waiting for them to get back to me, and I kind of don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Can you talk to our audience a little bit about what you mean when you say push a case forward or work up a case the right way, and how do you do that in the pre-lit stage versus the litigation stage?
It's a great question. Do you want to take that, or
I can tell you from my perspective. I'm interested in your thoughts.
Yeah.
So one thing that Jeremiah is so good at is collaborating as a team on our cases. And so from very early on, when we get a new case, we're sitting down and we're talking, okay, what's the big picture? What's the end goal here? What do we need evidence-wise? What does the other side, what are they looking for? And then we build the plan from there. So we're talking discovery plans early on. What depositions do we want? Who are the key witnesses? And what's missing? And so that really helps guide where we want to take the discovery and our investigation in the case. And so that's something that happens very early. And then, of course, you discover more information and build upon that as you go. But that, I think another aspect of it is we like to be in the driver's seat. We don't want to be on the defense with the defense hammering us with depositions, which happens, and that's fine. But we want to be the ones who are controlling the flow of the discovery and almost presenting it as if we're presenting our case in trial. And that's something Jeremiah does. Our offices are right next door, and I can hear him taking depositions, and they sound like trial cross-examinations of these defense witnesses. And that, I think, and my impression, and I think it's true, the defense sees what this presentation would look like at trial, and it just helps them inform themselves of our position and their adjusters and to value the case.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting because in pre-litigation, I mean, when you say pre-litigation, it's true. It's like, well, what should you do to like work up a case? And it is interesting because you have access to pretty much anything you need. As long as you have a relationship with the client, you call the client and say, listen, we're going to eventually need to tell this story. Why wait till the end? Let me know who are the people in your life that you want to tell this story. Because the more that you can have other people tell, you don't have to tell that part of the story. So you don't have to say, woe is me, and oh, I hurt all the time. You don't want to be that. Nobody wants you to complain about yourself. But if other people are talking about how it's affected you and how they see you in pain and all this, and then you just come in and you just say, I'm just working hard every day to try to get better. That's a lot easier, and it sounds a lot better. So tell me, who are those people, right? Tell me who are the people that are going to help tell your story, move that ball forward, and just get on the phone with them. I had a case, a really sad case we have going on right now in Arizona, and before we ever filed the case, before we did anything, I got a list of people that were in the area or that where this happened, the incident happened. So I started just, calling to say, hey, did you happen to, see this or know about this condition in the roadway? Because it was a roadway condition case. I started getting, yeah, I know all about it. And hey, would you mind if I do a quick Zoom with you? Let's just record the Zoom and I'll ask you some questions and tell me about it. And sure enough, that's how discovery happens. You don't need formal discovery. You just need somebody to give you a statement, right? So it's about being creative and doing the legwork to find out what happened and who are the people to help tell that story, and just start getting information from them, getting the information locked down, and building relationships with the damage witnesses early.
I really like that concept of interviewing these people before you're actually in the discovery phase of things, right? Because I was taught with a similar mentality, although it was before Zoom and before you had the ability to just kind of record some of these conversations in that way. But I always think the same thing. It's like before you actually file a lawsuit, you as the plaintiff attorney, you have such an advantage. You know your client and you know your client's story. The defense doesn't. Mm-hmm. You know how your client is going to come off at trial. The defense does not know that. And you have access to all of these witnesses where you can start building your case that the defense doesn't. Once you press the start button and you file that complaint, everything is now discoverable. You have to share all of your information, all of that, but you can do all of that legwork in the often 2 years statute of limitations. And you don't just have to sit back with your feet up. I love that.
Yeah, and it also, just think about how you send a message right out of the gate. If you file your case and be like, here's all our damage witnesses, here's all the videos, here's all our witness statements. I mean, they're just going to turn around and be like, okay, we
give up.
What can we do now? Can we go to a mediation?
Yeah.
What are we supposed to do at this point?
Yeah.
So it matters. And so I concur. You have access to a lot of that stuff to do that.
That's great. That's really great. I also think that you gave us a great soundbite for the theme of this show today, where I know it was your mentor that said it, but just get to all rise.
Yeah, just give him the credit for it. Jeremiah told his mentor, Jude Basile. Yes, I don't.
Where is Jude Basile out of?
He's out of San Luis Obispo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's got his own firm. He's not of counsel with our firm. He's not. There's no official capacity, but we have.
But he counsels you.
But he counsels us, and we're good friends. And
how did you get hooked up with him?
So through working at the Gomez firm, Jude has always been a close friend of John's as well, and so we got hooked up doing some cases together, and then Jude and I tried a case that's probably the most sort of formative case for me in that drug addiction treatment case that Jude and I tried together, and worked that case for like 2 years, and then we went to trial on it. And when you go to trial with somebody like that on a case like that, after working up for as long as I did, and in that type of case, you form a really close bond. And so I learned a lot from him in terms of just how to be in trial in terms of being authentic, but also he has been really instrumental in the practice of law, as I believe a model to be for our firm, which is like I said, small, but doing really important cases that you believe in. And that really, more than anything, I think that has been his message in terms of his practice that we have adhered to.
Yeah, well, you've also given us a great transition now in talking about the case that you say is so formative in your practice. But I was going to ask you next a little bit about Lowe Lazar law. Okay, so if you in this world of personal injury law, where you have a lot of people doing the same thing, it sounds like you guys are trying to do something different at your firm. What is it that you would like to be known for at Lowe Lazar, and what is it that you think that will be the future of your firm?
Yeah, I think as a very general sort of model, I guess, is that how I want to be seen as someone different is that folks in the community who might have really complex cases, complicated cases, but very serious injury cases, but there's just hard to see what the path forward would be to take on challenging cases that are righteous cases. And they may fall into all sorts of different categories, but we don't shy away from difficult cases. We are willing to take a shot on very complicated cases if we believe the injuries are there. They have to be serious injury cases or wrongful death cases. But if there's righteousness to it, then we can see why they're important cases. We will take risk. We will absolutely take risk and take on challenging cases, and in areas that maybe others wouldn't think to even touch.
Is that the same vision that you have, Victoria?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it ties back to maybe some young lawyers who have started their practice and they have a case where they think, okay, I'm out of my depth here. And we have the setup where we're equipped to, okay, we can either consult or come in and work at the case together. And it's a way to get that exposure and experience and have someone else to bounce ideas off of. And avoid committing malpractice, which is extremely important.
Or going bankrupt.
Or going bankrupt.
Right. Oh my gosh, that's great. I heard you talk a little bit about the drug addiction facilities in that case that you described with Jude, and in talking with you before the podcast, it's just not really an area of the law that I've ever heard about or considered before on the personal injury side of things. Can you just explain to our audience a little bit about that, and what is that? Where do you see that niche fitting into your firm?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because there's so much focus on the opioid epidemic in terms of the pills that are going out and the pharmaceutical companies who are making so much money off of the addiction. But what is often overlooked is there's a large for-profit industry, a multi-billion-dollar for-profit industry in treating addiction. And you think, well, the treatment providers must always be the helpers because they're helping get treat a disease, and so they obviously must be in it for the right reasons because they're in treatment. And the truth of the matter is there's a lot of really bad actors who when they're a couple of things kind of happened at once that led to this booming industry. One, which wasn't a bad thing, but the Affordable Care Act required insurance companies pay for this type of treatment, which is of course a good thing, so people get access to it. But when insurance is paying, these businesses know they're going to get guaranteed money from billing insurance for paying for this treatment. there's a lot of money there that would be at issue. And then number two, when the downturn happened in the financial industry, there was a lot of foreclosures. A lot of properties were being foreclosed upon. People were buying up properties real cheap. Well, it turns out this residential treatment industry are often run out of homes, residential homes in neighborhoods, in cul-de-sac, random streets. And what they do is they staff the house with a nurse or a behavioral health technician who's not even a nurse. And they will have, in California, you can have up to 6 beds in these houses. And each bed, they're doing treatment services. If you're doing detox, they're billing, $2,000, $1,500, $2,000 a night in some cases for detox treatment per person. So if you think about it, what they're making and having somebody come into this residential house, if they're doing detox, $1,500 times 6 per night, and the detox might be a week, and then they go and stay in a residential setting. It's still the same house, but it's in a lower level of care. They're making a ton of money.
Who is the lawsuit against? I mean,
this particular lawsuit was against the largest for-profit treatment provider, which is a publicly traded company. Which, if you think about that, you can kind of see there's potential conflicts when you're reporting to shareholders. By the name of American Addiction Centers. And so we brought a lawsuit against them. The case that we did up in Marietta, California, was against this company for a gentleman, Sean Reyna, who was trying to kick the addiction of alcohol and also benzodiazepine. The combination is very dangerous. He had was going blind and was very depressed because of this condition he had where he was going blind. He wasn't going to be able to work. It was a really, very difficult time for him. So he goes into this facility, his house. It's not even really a facility, a house, to get better. And while he's going through the detox, they basically stick him in a room. They don't really oversee. They don't take his vital signs. They're not doing the things that you would need to do to make sure that they're being kept safe, because it's a very serious time when you're going through this type of withdrawal. And so he ultimately began to hallucinate and ultimately took a razor blade that he had brought in with him for shaving, and took a razor blade to his wrist and killed himself, sliced his wrist and different parts of his body.
wow.
And so, somebody looking at that case might think, well, wait a minute, this is a suicide of somebody who's an alcoholic and a drug addict in a house. Why in the world are you suing the company that was trying to help him? This is
Right.
a suicide case. And that's what I mean about saying you have to really look deep into what's the model, the business model, and that this was really fueled by corporate greed in terms of heads in the beds, keeping them there and not thinking about, is this person somebody who is even appropriate for our house?
Wow.
Or do they need to be in a higher setting? And do we need to monitor them, to make sure we're watching them closely?
What's the cause of action against the facility? I mean,
It's negligence. It's a wrongful death, so negligence in failing to provide an appropriate level of care.
wow.
For somebody who you're accepting money to bring them in and not taking care of them. So ultimately, we got laughed at, we got ignored, we got told that that this was a frivolous case for years, and they threw everything at us in terms of litigation. And Pat Swan, who was also working on the case at the time, was just put through everything. I mean, they had so much money backed into this that it was the true David versus Goliath type of case. We were up against the machine. But once you get to that jury, right? Once you get to all rise, you are now in that even playing field. Nothing else matters, because now it's just up to the jury. And so they tried everything they could to bury us. And then once you got to trial, telling that story really just showed me the importance of just getting to trial and getting through all of that and just telling the story. Because once we told the story, the jury was completely with us, and ultimately they found the facility to be, 100% responsible
Wow.
for.
Can you tell us about the verdict?
Yeah, it was a $7 million verdict, and most importantly for us in the family is that it was 0% on the decedent, Sean
Oh my
Reyna.
gosh.
So that really, I think, influenced my passion going through that experience and learning about the addiction treatment and how vulnerable these people are going into treatment. Really formed a passion for this line of work, and Victoria and I have since handled a number of these cases, and it's amazing the consistency in terms of what you see in the corporate greed and then the vulnerability of the population they're serving.
I never even knew that this was an area of personal injury law or a problem, really. And in describing your client and people laughing at the potential that this is even a lawsuit, it reminds me a lot of BB Fell, who we had on the show, who talked to us about suing the doctor in her now famous case where she, I think, received like $140 million verdict or something insane. But it was very similar. She had a client who you guys probably know better than I do, but who had breast cancer and had treated at a facility. The guy was selling like alkaline type injections. We've got med mal caps here, and people told her this isn't a case, and she saw something that someone else didn't see. I think it's really, I don't know if it's in every attorney, and it seems to be in you guys. I don't know if it's something that you can teach, but it's certainly something I try to make anyone who works at my firm or anyone who's a young attorney who's getting into this field, think of how your case is unique from every other case that this adjuster has on their desk that day. Or think about if every other attorney is turning this case down, maybe there's something that's worth a second look from you, and maybe you can make a difference in this person's life, because obviously that case on paper is not one that people are grabbing at and fighting over.
Yeah. And then you're exactly right, though. It's sometimes it takes a fresh look at something, and maybe there isn't a case there, and that may be true. Sometimes there's tragedies, and that doesn't mean somebody's always at fault. But if you look carefully enough, sometimes you can find that there's wrongdoing, especially in a context of follow the money, right? If there's a lot of money behind something, then you got to really look. And I don't mean in terms of collectability. I mean in terms of business decisions. If money drives business decisions, that can lead to a lot of problems and a lot of people getting hurt.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You guys, I want to turn now to kind of a different and last segment of our podcast now. We're running a little over on time. It's hard with two people that I'm interviewing here, but you guys have been great guests so far, so thank you for that. We like to ask a couple just fun questions at the end of the podcast, and sometimes they throw people off and sometimes they don't. But what's next for you, Victoria? What are you most excited about? Whether it's in law, whether it's in your personal life, is there anything that you are particularly excited about that's coming up?
Well, I am very excited about getting comfortable as a business owner. I think that's something I obviously had no experience in, and there's a lot of unknowns, but I'm very proud of the fact that we are doing every part of it ourselves. I have my hands in every aspect of our business, which is very satisfying professionally. And so I'm looking forward to growing that and bringing someone in and building that team that we handpick and train and can set those processes and build a team that's working exactly how we want it to work with the firm environment and culture that we get to choose, which is family priority and, taking care of ourselves and being supportive as a team. And I've always very much admired seeing other teams and firms and businesses that just have such a good energy, and it's positive, and I very much respect that. And so I'm really looking forward to just continuing on with our business.
You guys have been open now for how long?
6 months.
6 months. Oh my gosh, amazing. Well,
Flew by.
Congratulations to you guys, because I've already seen some of the settlements that you've achieved in those 6 months just from following you guys on social media, and it's just an amazing thing that you guys are doing. So I applaud you on your efforts, and it sounds like we are going to have another stalwart in our community for a long time to come at Lowe Lazar Law. Jeremiah, are there books in particular that you read or podcasts that you listen to? Obviously not this one. I know that you already listened to this one, but for our students, any recommendations that you have, whether they're legal or not? I know a couple people on the show have recommended some business books or anything like that. Are you an avid reader?
Yeah, I'm not an avid reader, but there are some certain things that I think have been influential to me in terms of just the both legal and sort of non-legal. You Can't Teach Hungry, I've always liked. You Can't Teach Hungry because I think it really, there's a lot of lessons in sort of work ethic that I think are really important and translate well into anything. There's another one that it takes about a day to read. It's so short, but it's so powerful. It's called Who Moved My Cheese? And it's about it's almost like a kid's book. But
I was going to say, is this something you read to your daughters? Or is this
brilliant. I could, and she probably would understand the concepts, which is why it's so brilliant. And you should read it because it's the best for people who maybe need that little push to be entrepreneurs because they're a little risk averse. It talks about that it's almost more risky to not take that leap than it is to take that leap. And because in the whole book, I mean, it all kind of walks through. It makes perfect sense when you get through it. But it really encourages you to take those chances, to take
What's
some
the
risks.
title of that one again?
Who Moved My Cheese?
Who Moved My Cheese?
Yeah.
I like that.
That's I really enjoyed that one. And then I like always learning about companies that over the history of time, leadership books, because I think business leaders, no matter whether you're working for a firm or doing your own thing, it doesn't matter. I think understanding leadership is really important. So I think Success Built to Last is a really good book about leadership, and it follows different companies who have been over long history, like Ford and some other big name companies, and talks about the consistency between those businesses as to explaining their reason for success. Let's see, the legal book I really like is Don't Eat the Bruises by Keith Mitnick.
Yeah.
Very easy and digestible, and really easy to understand the concepts of it.
A lot of like on-premises liability in there too, right?
Yeah, got some really good stuff. He's got a good podcast too, actually. Mitnick's Monthly Brushstrokes is really good. I'm trying to think. There's some others that are really good that I can't think of at the moment.
Victoria, how about you? You want to jump in?
Yeah, I do. I have one I wanted to say. It's not a legal book, but it's Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. He has a podcast, but he's a Marine, ex-Marine. Well, I don't know if you're ever an ex-Marine. He's a Marine, and he's an entrepreneur, business coach, and just the principles and the lessons they talk about. It's things to be a better business partner, employee, spouse, friend. It's really amazing.
Well, I think that it's worth congratulating you two again on starting your practice because like you're talking about with extreme ownership, I think forming a partnership in particular is one of the hardest decisions to make in a professional setting because it's just like a marriage in a lot of ways, right? And you guys are going into business together, and it seems like you've had a lot of success in a very short period of time, and I wish you guys nothing but success in the future. Can you just tell our guests before we sign off where they can find you? Are you guys on social media? You want to give law firm website name, numbers, anything like that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so our website is lowelazarlaw.com, and we're Lowe Lazar Law on Instagram. I'm Victoria Lazar, ESQ on Instagram, and what is your Instagram handle?
I have no idea. I think it's Jerlo17. I'm terrible at social media.
If you go to the firm website and social media platforms, you can find both of us easily.
I think we know who heads up the social media department at the firm. I'm getting a general sense here. I can't be sure, but
I am very much old school. trying to learn social media, but I'm way behind the game, that's for sure.
Well, you guys have been fantastic guests. Thank you for both coming on the show and allowing me to do both of your interviews at once. This is a unique experience for me. So,
well, kudos to you, because I gave you like 10 minutes notice. I say, hey, is it okay if we do it together? And it's not easy to adjust like that on the fly. And obviously, you did a great job. So thank you for indulging and having us both on.
Yes, thank you.
It's been a pleasure, guys. I'm going to sign off now officially. I'm your host, Michael Goldfaden, founder of the plaintiff's personal injury firm, Goldfaden Law, located here in San Diego, California. You've been watching the Barbites podcast with our guests, Jeremiah Lowe and Victoria Lazar. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again next time. Thanks, guys.